All right. So on tonight's episode of Locked On Warriors, Carlos Correa, is he going to play with the Giants? Does this mean he's a free agent? What about the Niners? Brock Purdy, he's looking good. Is he going to continue this week? We got all that and so much more next. Oh, yeah, and the Warriors too. This is Locked On Warriors.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. Today's episode is brought to you by BetterHelp. If you're a member of Dub Nation, highly recommend checking them out after tonight's game. As the world's largest therapy service, BetterHelp has matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, available 100% online. Learn more and save 10% off your order. And save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. You can follow Kylen Mills on all social media platforms, including Twitter, Instagram, TikTok, at Kylen Mills. You can follow me on Twitter at DogSurfRoadshow. Kylen, that was ugly. I don't know where we're going to find a silver lining in this. Your first reaction to the Warriors getting thumped in Madison Square Garden.
Yeah, it wasn't pretty, Cyrus. And I'm trying to think of like what stood out, but it was just like bad overall. So I feel like it's hard to point to one or two things. And I'm still trying to come up with a positive. To me, the biggest thing, one, points in the paint and rebounding. The Warriors got dominated. So I think, just they've got to have a bigger presence inside. They've got to be more intentional with boards. And I think that's why in the second quarter, the Warriors switched to a zone defense because they wanted to try to, close the gap a little bit in that disparity. At that point, the Knicks were doubling them up in rebounds. They also had like a 4-point edge on points in the paint. So I think the Warriors were trying to pack it in a little bit and, try to even that gap. However, it was also so difficult because the Knicks were hitting everything from three. Like midway through the second quarter, New York was shooting more than 55% from deep. So how do you defend a team that's doing that? So I think it was a combination of the Warriors getting beat up a little bit inside, and then the Knicks were red hot from three. So it's like, how do you defend or shut down a team when that's happening? Someone I think just pointed out the Wiseman plus minus, and I do want to talk a lot about, some extended minutes for some of the young players that we've been wanting to evaluate. And minus 29 for James Wiseman is not good, and I don't think he looked great. I don't even know where to start, but just like the same thing with like just like game awareness, positioning, like IQ. I still don't think his hands are strong enough. Like it's like, I don't know. It's just like a myriad of issues for me that I don't think James Wiseman looks ready at all.
No, he looked awful. My only critique, like a few people were tweeting at me like, "Hey, the youngsters are out there tonight. They're actually getting minutes." And it's like, well, we saw this lineup in the fourth quarter where you had Moody, Kuminga, Wiseman out there, but they were with Ty Jerome, who actually had a good game, relatively speaking, offensively.
Yeah, he did.
And Anthony Lamb, and it's like, what I would love to see are the three youngsters out there with two veterans who can help them. Not the three youngsters out there with two-way players. That's a recipe for disaster. I mean, when we saw that, the game was already over at that point. But I'd like to see the youngsters surrounded with veterans so that they're being guided, they're being mentored. Whatever mistakes they're naturally going to make as youngsters, at least that can be picked up a little bit with the veterans out there to make it up. Look, people are mentioning in the chat, for example, like Ty Jerome had the lowest plus minus tonight with 0, right? But look, the Warriors lost this game by 38 points. That's what happens when Ty Jerome is your best player. They're going to lose a game by 38 points. I'm not here to bash Ty Jerome and Anthony Lamb. And truth be told, I didn't mind seeing them tonight because my whole issue with these two all season is them stealing minutes from the youngsters. That's my gripe. But tonight, they were so depleted, you had to play them. They were not the reason for losing this game. You brought up one fascinating stat, maybe not fascinating, but it was certainly astute in the sense of why the Warriors struggled. And that was their inside game, rebounding. You've, in fact, Kylen, have been talking about this team lacking size all season, that being a huge issue. Wiseman did nothing to help with that tonight. But what makes matters worse is that the Warriors' injuries are not really affecting their front line that much. I know JaMychal Green missed tonight's game, but they should be able to survive without him. You still had Draymond, you still had Looney, but they lost in offensive rebounds, for example. The Knicks beat them in that department 14-4. They beat them in overall rebounds 47-29. How do you fix that? Do you have any theories, any ideas on what the Warriors could do? Because they're routinely getting hammered on the boards, and it's not cool to watch. It's just not cool to watch at all. I don't know. Your thoughts on that?
It's not. The rebounding disparity tonight between the Warriors and Knicks, 47-29, just ugly and horrible to see, especially because, like I mentioned, the Warriors were playing in a zone for a portion of the game. And like that should theoretically just by the basis of the formation, be packing more bodies inside the paint, throwing just more people in a position to potentially bring down rebounds, yet they still couldn't do it. So I'm just a little bit baffled by how the Warriors still, even after it looked like Steve Kerr was trying to make some adjustments, and like I said, with switching to a zone at one point, and it's like they still couldn't pull down boards. And you mentioned the offensive rebounds, a huge problem. They can't be giving up second chance points. And as for what you do about that, like I just think that in general, the Warriors need more size. I just think that especially the size in the second unit just ain't doing it. I mean, I do think that generally Draymond Green and Kevon Looney both not great on the boards tonight, 6 and 5. Those two can typically put up a little bit bigger numbers. But like in the second unit, like who's leading the charge? Anthony Lamb, who I guess is like one of their only go-to bigs in the second unit now at this point. He's a two-way player, had 1 rebound tonight. Jonathan Kuminga reeled in a couple more, but like who's going to be doing it? And, you know, you saw them experiment with James Wiseman potentially being a rim runner, a rim protector. Shouldn't he be a body in the paint? And he's basically ineffective from what I watched tonight. So to me, it's a little bit of the roster construction being a problem. I mean, when you talk about rebounding, you also got to talk about hustle plays, just doing the simple basics of boxing out. And I also don't think the Warriors are executing those basics well either. So it's a combination of things, but I mean, clearly that's a problem that needs to be addressed. I think that adding another big in the second unit would help. I don't know that it would totally fix that issue. I mean, throughout the season, Steph Curry's been leading the Warriors in rebounding, or he's been up there as one of the top couple guys. I mean, what does that tell you? To me, it's a big problem.
I agree. He was leading the team, excuse me, for like the first 15, 20 games, and then Kevon Looney has just been doing so great that he finally took over that lead. But I hear what you're saying. Yeah. And the thing is, last year, you had 2 players off the bench that were masking the size problem a lot. Otto Porter Jr., even though, whatever position you want to label him as, small forward, power forward, he's still 6'8". He's a smart player, and he was helping out in terms of rebounding and all the other stuff you got to do inside the paint and near the basket. And then Imani Bielitsa was another one. And then you also even had Juan Toscano Anderson, who was not there were times last year where they were playing him as a center. And again, you let him go. This team is in huge trouble. I look, the Warriors were missing a lot of pieces tonight. It's understandable that they lost. In fact, I was a little surprised they were even putting up a fight for the first 2.5 quarters before the Knicks finally started steamrolling them again with the rebounds. Their 3-point shot was just outrageously effective tonight. And like no cap, for example, Rice, he's been saying the season's over. I'm far from getting to that point. One huge reason I'll touch on in just a second is the standings. The entire Western Conference is in shambles right now. No one can pull away. No one can consistently win a stretch of games. So even though the Warriors are playing awful basketball, they're still right in it. But if the championship is your aspiration, and it damn well should be, I mean, you're the defending world champions. Your best players maybe are still in the prime. We need to touch on Klay Thompson in a minute because that was bad. I think that's like player number 1 that should be focused on tonight because he is not doing anything. I mean, so let's touch on that and a lot more and try not to be super doom and gloom. First, got to give some love to BetterHelp. I'm a strong advocate for seeking mental health. I'm a strong advocate for just communicating with a professional who can help with your mental health. And it's not always easy to find someone. So the thing is, BetterHelp is here for you. So this show is sponsored today by BetterHelp. Uh, I'm trying to see, like, my notes are completely crashing on me here. Oh, there we go. Okay, it's working now. So the BetterHelp works like this, right? Like, you literally just sign up, and they will find one of their thousands of therapists, hopefully match you with the right one, and maybe you can find just a little more happiness. Maybe you can have some of those anxiety levels come down. Maybe your relationship can improve. Whatever emotional difficulties you're facing, or whatever coping skills you're challenged with, BetterHelp is there for you. They're the world's largest therapy service. They've matched 3 million people with professionally licensed and vetted therapists, and they're available 100% online. Plus, maybe most importantly, they're affordable. All you have to do is fill out a brief questionnaire to match with a therapist. If things aren't clicking, you can easily switch to a new therapist anytime. It couldn't be simpler. No waiting rooms, no traffic, no endless searching for the right therapist. Learn more and save 10% off your first month at betterhelp.com/lockedonnba. Again, that's BetterHelp, HELP.com/lockedonnba.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. Make sure to check out Locked On Sports today, the biggest stories around the sports world in 20 minutes or less, plus instant reactions, game recaps, and Locked On's take of the day. Locked On Sports today, available on YouTube and wherever you get your podcasts. You can follow Kylen Mills on Twitter, Instagram, TikTok at Kylen Mills. Let's talk about Klay Thompson here, because he had an awful game. And to be honest, this has not been a good season for him. And until very recently, I personally was sticking up for him big time because, look, this is a future Hall of Famer. Just missed being on the NBA 75 list. I think should have been included. Probably will be retroactively when they have the 100th anniversary team announced. But this year he's been bad. There is no excuse for this. In tonight's game, he played 26 minutes, was just 1 for 5 from 3. I reached out to Rick Barry because I wanted to get his perspective on Klay's shooting form. Because one thing I've noticed with his shot recently is that you're not seeing a follow through. It's like he's just almost just like hurrying his shot, and it looks a little funky. It looks a little different from what I've seen in the past. But point being, like on a night like this, when DiVincenzo's out because of the flu, we're not feeling good. JaMychal Green out for a similar reason. Steph obviously out. Andrew Wiggins, hopefully he'll be back soon. I mean, his value is immeasurable for this team. Klay Thompson is the player that really needs to step up and be the leader of this team. Maybe not vocally. I know this Draymond Green's role much more so, but Klay Thompson, at least on the court, in terms of performance, in terms of keeping your team in the game, making clutch baskets, making difficult baskets, finding the right person. I know passing is not always like his strongest suit, but he's not a bad passer either. He was bad. 11 points. When you talk about that minus 29 for James Wiseman in terms of plus minus, Klay Thompson only played 4 more minutes than him, and his plus minus was 28 in the negative. That is just awful. What are your thoughts on Klay? Because I mean, we'll obviously get more into this in terms of the team, but let's start with him. What are your thoughts on Klay Thompson, Kylen? Like, are you okay with this? Are you seeing anything unusual? Just please take the floor and talk about Klay.
I want to give a shout out to one comment. Dynasty Dom wrote way farther down in the chat, so you won't even find it, but he said that he needs better help just from being a Warriors fan and a Raiders fan this season. So shout out to Dynasty Dom for what you must be going through trying to cheer on those two teams. At the current moment, there's still time for the Warriors, but they've got to turn the ship around quickly. In terms of Klay Thompson, someone brought up an interesting point in the chat as well. I don't remember who it was, asking if he's potentially still injured or dealing with some type of physical malady that's affecting his shot. I don't know and haven't heard anything in regards to that. But to me, just Klay Thompson has been so inconsistent, and it's been tough because you see flashes of old Klay, and you see flashes of Klay playing well where he's being more patient, he's making the extra pass, he's letting the game come to him, and he's taking the open shots when they're there. Yes, there's Dynasty Dom. Shout out to
Yeah.
Dynasty Dom. That's a rough spot to be in right now. But we're seeing flashes of Klay play well, but he's just so inconsistent. And like tonight, I just don't. There's times where I think he rushes his shot. He doesn't read the game well. He doesn't just like make the right decisions, make the easy decisions. So I think it's really tough. Like when he's forcing shots, it just the whole offense crumbles and the whole offense falls apart and affects the rest of the team. I don't know. Like I said, I'm hesitant to give up on Klay because I think we've seen moments this season where he's looked good, but like it's just not consistently there.
Yeah.
And so what
Yes.
do you do with a player who's not bringing that night in and night out? And a lot of people have been saying they think he's been, taking too many shots and just, he needs to be kept in check. Someone just mentioned Andre, is that a thing? I mean, when they had that big come to Jesus team meeting, I think that's something a lot of people alluded to was discussed was that, Klay was forcing the game, taking too many, needed to just have that patience and make the extra pass. I still don't think he's necessarily there with, like just reading the game and playing the ball, playing simple and being patient. Like I just feel like he's forcing it, like all around forcing
Yes.
it, not
Yes.
good.
Yes.
And as far as the theories about him possibly being injured, I haven't heard anything of the sort. But I mean, and I haven't really watched closely his release or anything like that, Cyrus. So I think that's an interesting point that we'll have to look out for. But if there were any changes to his release, could it be post-injury related? I think whether he's going through something currently right now or it's still just in the twilight of these serious injuries, that's always a possibility, because mechanics easily can change when dealing with severe injuries like that. Now, here's my question. A lot of people are pointing out in the chat as well, do you bring in Klay Thompson off the bench? And it's something that we've kind of kicked around throughout the season with the way Jordan Poole scores with the starting lineup, and he seems to do well when being inserted into the starting lineup. Is that something you consider? I don't think that Coach Kerr ever will, and he's pretty much stood by all season that Klay is going to be in the starting lineup no matter what. But I don't know. I mean, at what point does the way a guy is playing have to affect whether or not he's in the starting rotation?
I
I think
agree.
at some point that has to be considered.
Absolutely. And again, I promoted this yesterday, and it's scrolling along at the bottom of the screen for those watching the show right now. But Rick Barry and I did a great show a couple days ago, just because Rick just was completely like took the filter off. I know he's usually unfiltered anyways, but
Yeah.
he really refrains from criticizing the Warriors unless it's warranted. And that was one of his suggestions. And that's why I bring him up, is because I asked him what his thoughts were about moving Klay to the bench. Look, and for people who think it's a disrespectful suggestion, I get it. Okay, like what Klay's done for this organization, the man's gonna have a statue outside of Chase Center someday. I still think he can play. But by the way, the injury thing, in case for anyone curious why that keeps being brought up, it's because I think before the Toronto game, or it might have been the game before that, he was questionable on the injury report with a knee soreness, I believe. And so maybe people are wondering if that injury has something to do with his struggles lately. But this has been most of the season. I mean, you're right. Klay will have, like, he had his 41-point game some nights ago, and he has moments where he reminds you that he's still one of the best shooters ever, even now. But on a night like this, when you really need him, and for Klay Thompson in 26 minutes of play to just have 11 points, only shoot 1 for 5 from 3, he just and the weirdest part to me is he looks disinterested. Like, he doesn't look like he's having fun out there, and that part sucks, because Klay's usually the guy that has the energy that everyone else feeds off of. I know Steph's the obvious one, but Klay is also a really like positive vibes type of player where, his attitude and his energy is contagious. And right now, he doesn't look like he's having fun. He looks like miserable out there. I don't know what's going on with him, but Kylen, I'm with you. I don't think it's disrespectful to suggest Klay Thompson coming off the bench. Manu Ginobili did it, all right? And he still had a lot of amazing years after they made that change. He's still going to the Hall of Fame.
Steph Curry did it last season.
Yeah, yes, absolutely. Draymond Green
I mean, there
did
was
it.
a reason it was situational, but still, he was willing to do it.
Absolutely. So I'm all for that. But the thing is, when we come back, and I want to propose this to all the chat folks, and be respectful, please, in the chat. Maintain some etiquette there, folks. but I want to propose this to all the people involved right now. We got 120 people joining us, and that number is growing right now. I love it, especially after a game like that. Who should the Warriors trade for? Let's hear it. Because when we come back, I'm with anyone who thinks a trade is now needed. I don't think it's something that they might need. I don't think it's something they should consider. I think a serious change is needed, whether that's a trade, whether they have their eyes on someone in the buyout market, something is needed. This team in its current construction, I don't think is winning a championship. I'm losing faith fast. So yeah, throw some trade proposals out there. In the meantime, let's talk about BetOnline, longtime sponsor. They got an overlay of their own, and I'm also going to be curious to see. Actually, Kylen, can you help me out and look up what the line is for tomorrow's Warriors Nets game? I don't know it's published, but if you don't mind checking that out real quick, I'm curious. I would guess they're going to be 10-point underdogs. That's my guess. But anyways, BetOnline. .net is your number one source for sports betting information, statistics, news, analysis. You can get all the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. You can even bet on the Santa Cruz Warriors, folks. The G League is in a midseason tournament right now. You could bet on professional soccer. The World Cup's over, but that doesn't mean all those other leagues aren't jumping right back up again. Whatever you want to bet on, NFL, college bowl season, betonline.net is your resource. They even offer sports podcasts pertaining to gambling. They're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting information. Kylen, do we have a line, or is it still hidden?
I don't see it out yet.
Yeah, that makes sense. I wasn't sure if it was going to be available or not.
Yeah,
So
I'm looking through all the games. I don't see it yet.
what's your guess, Kylen? Like, what would you guess the line will be? I'm going to say Nets -10. I think the odds makers. Yeah, well, just because the Warriors are shorthanded, the Nets are fully healthy. Every player is available for them right now, which is crazy, and they're looking good. They're 7-8 games above 500. Yeah, I think it's going to be 10. What's your prediction?
I was thinking Nets maybe 6 or 7, -6 or 7. I do think they should clearly be the favorites in this game. The Warriors' struggles on the road, the depleted roster. Nets have been solid recently. So yeah, I just wasn't quite going with the double digit, but I could see where you get that.
Absolutely. I hope I'm wrong, but I think that's what's going to happen. Head to their website today. Again, it's betonline.net, or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline, it's where the game starts.
You are Locked On Warriors, your daily Golden State Warriors podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Thank you for making Locked On Warriors your first listen every day. We're free and available wherever you get podcasts. I was laughing because someone in the chat, Mac Bolin, writes, trade Iggy. Okay, sure. I wonder if he even could. I wonder if anyone would even offer anything for him. Kylen, did you see anything interesting in the chat about trade proposals?
We've had a lot of people dropping some lines about trade proposals. You can look and see if anything that interests you. I mean, I did want to mention, I think you touched on just really quickly, just some of the young players getting time at the end of the game, and that you wish they were playing, mixed in with some of the vets. However, I want to sigh bobble.
What else do you like that? Anyways, sorry.
In terms of some of the young players getting time in garbage time, like the only thing is, like, honestly, that showing was really discouraging to me from the young guns. Like, honestly, they were also playing against the Knicks garbage time players. So, like, to me, they shouldn't have looked that bad. Like, the Warriors someone said 13 points in the fourth quarter, and I hadn't looked at the box score like close enough, but like,
that bad?
It was bad.
You're right.
There were like several minutes that went by where they couldn't score. And like, I just like, it's great to give the young players time. It's like, when you get that time, then take advantage of it. Even if it's garbage time, they're not playing against the Knicks starters. Like, do something, show something, give us something to be excited about. And like, it was just like it looked like it was a drag, and like no one was bringing energy. It was just like, it was ugly. They were just totally disconnected. And someone pointed out in the chat way earlier, is this on Kerr or is this on the team? Because other teams' young players and bench players are more developed than the Warriors. So is that what we're seeing? Is that why we're seeing that noticeable disparity when it comes to garbage time, where one team's garbage time players are way better than the other teams? So I'm curious I don't know if how much of that you put on the front office and on Steve Kerr. Why are you laughing?
I'm just because just all the chat questions and just
I know.
the chat's ridiculous. It's funny. It's funny. Don't get me wrong, but I was also thinking about 5-10 minutes ago when the BetterHelp thing, when someone was like, "I need help for the Warriors." For anybody out, I thought of that because for anybody in Dub Nation or anybody who loves the Warriors, who's younger, right, who doesn't really remember much of the days before the Steph and Curry years, this is how it was every night. Every night. Like they would win games here and there, but this was the vibe, the hopelessness, the depression. This was Warriors basketball from when I started watching this team in like 1986 all the way up until 2012. They had a few moments. Like the Run TMC years were awesome. When Chris Webber was there for that year, it was awesome. The We Believe team was awesome. But those are tiny little moments mixed in with like 3 decades of just pure abysmal play. And tonight just reminded me of that. So that's why I was laughing. I was thinking about that whoever wrote that they need better help for the Warriors, because my Lord, I don't want to see that ever happen again. They need change though. I do
They
blame
need
Kerr in a
change.
lot of
I
ways.
want to propose a question. Like, if the
Please.
Warriors don't change their roster at all, like, what is the 9-man rotation, assuming they squeak into a play-in spot or a playoff spot or wherever they have, wherever they end up at? Like, I can't even put together, like, in my own head, a 9-man rotation that I would feel strongly about. Like,
Mm,
who would be in it? And then, as we discussed, like, technically Lamb and Jerome are approaching their 50 game, limit very quickly. Like I said,
that's
but still, are you putting a two-way player? Let's say they sign to a roster, like that's a guy in your 9-man playoff rotation. Like, I don't think that Anthony Lamb is there or is good enough or talented enough for that at all. So, like, who would the 9-man rotation be? Like, because some people say,
well.
oh, well, come the playoffs, they won't have to roll this deep. But like, I still don't know what 9 I would put in.
Well, Dante DiVincenzo and Jordan Poole
Yeah, for
are
sure.
your 6'7", and you're comfortable with that.
Yeah,
Andre Iguodala, if the plan all along is to save him until January, February, and then he actually still resembles his old self, although I think that's ridiculous if you're relying on that. I mean, Kylen,
right.
you were like leaving him for dead last year, and rightfully so,
Yeah,
because he's Izell. Like, I mean, his neck, his back, his neck and his back. Like he's done. He's an old player. So but let's say for argument's sake, he's your 8. All right. I think JaMychal Green would probably be your 9. That's your 9. That's not a championship team. That's not winning
yeah,
a chip. That's not winning a chip. And that's where I do think they need to make a move. They need to make whether it's a free agent, you've been advocating for DeMarcus Cousins.
yeah,
I am so for that. But someone also alluded in the chat that that the Warriors will never bring him in. There was a story, I think like a week or
yeah.
two ago, that came out where DeMarcus Cousins in an interview said that he actually called Bob Myers and asked Bob, why is no one signing me? Right? Like he's frustrated. I
Yeah,
supposedly
I saw that article,
you
I
saw
think, that
that
you're
too?
talking about.
Yeah, and I guess Bob Myers told him. Do you remember what the answer was? It was something to do with like he has to prove that he can get along with other people. I think that's the stigma that's attached to him right now, is that he can't get along with anyone else. But there's also been a lot of stories of him and Steve Kerr, um, maybe respecting each other, but Kerr just does not want him back on the team. That's a Kerr thing.
Mhm.
So yeah, I do think if you're going to point a finger on this team in terms of what's wrong, Kerr's number one, absolutely number one, because like you said, he's not developing the youngsters at all. When you look at his track record of developing players overall, there's only 2 success stories. Jordan Poole, relative success story. We love him, but he, make an all-star team, and then I'll really be impressed. And then Kevon Looney. And Kevon Looney is awesome, but he's a role player, right?
Yeah,
And then, Jordan Poole, might be an all-star. I'm not going to hate on Kerr for that, but that's the extent of it. He's never really developed anyone else. And what he's doing with these 3 lottery picks, you can't say it's successful. You can't
yeah,
praise this,
yeah. I
this is a
agree.
mess. Yeah, this is a mess. They're 2 games under 500. They own the worst road record in the NBA. Are there any I mean, Kylen, are there any positives to you? Like, is there anything you know, I guess you could still say that. Thanks for mixing it up.
I was about to say the dogs have had enough because like I hear some grumbling in the background, but they're
And you
done.
got
They're
pizza.
done with the Warriors. They're sick of it. They're out. They're over it.
And you got pizza to go eat. I'll say this though, and this is where the optimism remains, and this is where I think the Warriors are not hitting panic buttons, is because when you look at the standings right now, the Warriors technically would not even make the play-in if the season ended today. They're now the 11th seed, but they're just 2.5 games back of the 6th seed. They're just 3 games back of the 5 seed. They're, so and just another game on top of that, and suddenly you're the 4 seed. So it's just the West is just so jumbled and mediocre, and so who knows? This is a weird season. Anything else we want to finish up on?
It is. I mean, I think the positive is that Andrew Wiggins and Steph Curry are out right now. So while these games are brutal, this is nothing of what the team will look like at full strength and full health. And I feel like Wiggins is the player who is taken for granted the most on this Warriors team. And like literally, I think just like one of the most overlooked players in the NBA. Now he did finally get, his little all-star nod with some help last season, but like he's been playing like an all-star decidedly this season, if you ask me, Andrew Wiggins. So I think the positive is that Wiggins and Steph back healthy. I think the starting 5 is very strong, as we saw last season. I don't know about the bench. I think that it's really important that they try to figure out how to get Jordan Poole going, because if Jordan Poole is coming off the bench and putting in 20 plus a night, then I suddenly feel a lot more optimistic if he's able to carry, that type of offensive workload. But as of late and as of the season, him in that 6-man role, he's been relatively ineffective and not putting up big numbers. And then without him, like there's not a real scorer. I mean, Dante DiVincenzo is a great player who I've talked about energy-wise, intangibles, defense, facilitating, but he's not a scorer. And then I think just the situation with the bigs is a mess. I mean, JaMychal Green, up and down. I don't feel like should be the ninth guy off the bench in a championship team. And then you've got Kuminga, who also I feel like is up and down. Love the potential, love the talent, but like just not 100% ready, at least to bring it consistently every single night. I think he's still developing. And so it's just like with that second unit after, like you said, those first 7, I just would love to see the Warriors make a move. I would love to see the Warriors make a move. I don't think it's going to happen, but I would love to see that happen. I think that they're still going to be in the playoffs. I think they're still going to win a lot of games down the stretch. I just don't know, do they have that deep enough and strong enough 9 to win multiple series in the playoffs?
I agree with you. And I really do believe this team needs to do something. I don't think this roster currently can. Yeah. I mean, even if like you somehow luck out and you win the West, although I guess they proved they could be the Celtics. So I don't know. I guess nothing can surprise us with this team, but I would not like my chances with this current roster. They got to do something, even if it's small, just something. Well, whatever. Regardless, again, just 2.5 games back of the 6th seed, so it's early. And the great news is this road trip ends tomorrow against the Nets. Any predictions for that, Kylen? You'll be back with me on Thursday, right?
Yep, on Thursday.
Yeah. What are your predictions for the Nets tomorrow?
If DiVincenzo and JaMychal Green are still ill tomorrow, if they're still out sick, because I don't think that's been determined yet, they're a day-to-day situation because they're both dealing with short-term non-COVID illnesses. If they're still out, I think the chances are very grim. Like, I think they'll be close to the lines that we were discussing. I think the Nets are going to take this one. If those two are healthy, I do think that even that would be a boost. Like, JaMychal Green and Dante DiVincenzo back in the lineup would be a big boost. Then I suddenly think that their chances get a lot better to be competitive. But without those two, I think it's going to be Nets all the way.
Absolutely. Do you want to hear some sound before we go from Steve Kerr?
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. So this is Steve Kerr. And this is one weird thing, Kyle. And we haven't talked about this much, but when the season started, all media had access to the Warriors press conferences through Zoom. And this started because of the pandemic and we had all these, social distancing and whatnot. Well, this year the Zoom stuff is done. And especially on the road, it's become really difficult to get sound. It's become difficult to get questions answered. So the only people that really can provide anything for us when they're on the road are the beat reporters and NBC Sports Bay Area, who obviously has like a TV crew traveling with the team. So when they publish anything, we have to be lucky enough to use it. So here is Steve Kerr, courtesy of NBC Sports Bay Area, talking about the youngsters following tonight's game.
Yeah, I mean, look, these young guys are working their butts off every day in practice. And, I want them, we all want them to have success. And so it's tough to see, when things don't go well. At the same time, we got to keep our energy and our spirit up. But look, it's not an easy position to be in, and they're all so raw, so young that they're not ready yet to figure out how to get each other shots, and it's just a tough situation for them to be in, and I'm just asking them to keep working and reminding them that things will get better.
I've never been less inspired by Steve Kerr my entire life until this year. You're not doing it for me, coach. You're not doing it for me, man. Something's off here. Something's going on. I almost feel like that whatever this rift is between Kerr and the front office, just little by little, it's just spilling out into the world more and more as the season goes along. Is that just me, Kylen? Do you see any of that yourself? I don't know.
I just am curious, like, if all these young players aren't ready, and James Wiseman and, Moses Moody, even Jonathan Kuminga, who's, he's given minutes to, he's taken them away. Who's to blame for that then? And like, I do think there's something to be said that it takes time, but also like, I don't know. Like, I feel like they should be farther along than they are. And like, even just seeing some of the rookies tonight, it just was like, it was tough. And like,
Yes.
Who's to blame if they aren't ready and if they're so far off still? I don't know.
We'll see what happens. This has been an interesting year for sure. The Warriors have not been a source of happiness like they normally are. I'm usually accustomed to getting joy from this team, and that joy is just empty. Tomorrow, Casey Stern joins me. He's notorious for blasting Kyrie Irving. And so I figured with the Warriors playing the Nets, what better guest to have on for a post-game show than Casey and his humor. So that's what's coming on tomorrow. Kylen, you'll join me for Thursday's show. That'll be the final show of the week. Yeah. Any last notes?
Hard to take away any positives from that one. I'll just say that. But the good news is another game tomorrow, another chance to hopefully for redemption for some of these young guys and a more competitive effort from the Warriors.
There we go. Thanks, folks, for joining us. We're all in this together, okay? Misery loves company, so, let's all. Bye, everyone.
Even the dogs are over it. We're out.
Even if there's one thing, as you know, this Kylen is, I'm sure, as well as anybody as a media professional, if there's one thing worse than losing, it's being irrelevant. And they're creeping there. It's bad. We'll see what happens tomorrow. Bye, Kylen. Love you. Love everyone.